Hi, Maud. Good to have you here.
Hi, Steph. Happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Yes. So, Alephium is the first operational sharded layer one blockchain with which kind of enhances on uh, UTXO and proof of work mechanisms. It's this big thing. You guys have launched it mainnet. So I feel like first of all, we don't give enough credit to teams who pull this off, just in and of itself.
Thank
And
you.
and secondly, you are the chief operating officer of Alephium, and you've seen uh, kind of the history of it play out, or at least from when you began at Alephium. And we're just curious to know how that history has felt to you, and what's been really cool about it, what's been challenging, and if you could just kind of set the picture of when you started with Alephium and how that's felt playing out, and then we'll dig in a little bit more into some background and some other things.
Yeah, of course. So I joined Alephium personally in June 2021. So that was kind of at the end of the hardcore development phase, where basically in the early days of Alephium, it was basically three core developers working on the tech, and there was that was it for the project. There was no marketing and no one taking care of so much about the administrative aspect of running a project and things like this. And so I joined really at the end, really at the end of the development effort before the mainnet launch, and right in the middle of a private pre-sale that we were having at the time to fund the project for the first few years. Um, it felt from my personal perspective, it really felt great because I arrived at a time where I could really bring value because it was a purely developer oriented project. So on the operational side, not much was done. So I was able to build the kind of the administrative side of the project, the legal aspect of the project, and also start a marketing and communication department. It was really exciting to see the tech comes to life because I really got to arrive right before the minute launched. And you touched base on this before, but I think the work that was done by the core team during those this year and a half before I joined is really incredible because we're talking about three people working nonstop, um, and since the minute was launched, it's been really great. So I think everyone has done a great job.
Yeah, it's maybe you say you joined at the end of when the development happened, and now just a completely new phase of development is happening, and
Yes, yes,
that's bootstrapping the network and getting the ecosystem going and thinking about governance and tokenomics, community development, fundraising, team building.
yeah,
All of these things kind of fall into more of the logistics and operations side, and that's where that's a role that and the shoes that you're filling. So
yeah.
I
And
can.
sorry, I want to say is like you touch a good point that I forgot to mention is like we also build up the core team, and I think this is to this day one of our greatest success.
uh, in our conversation with Cheng, he did mention a little bit about management, and I thought he had an interesting perspective, which was he said that was something easier. He found easier than expected, because the way that he views it is. These individuals are like computers, and we're running a distributed computing system. And coming from the tech side of things and the engineering side, that makes perfect sense to me. From your side of things, I'm sure it's maybe messier or maybe not. Could you speak to team building
Yeah.
and that type of thing?
Yeah, I think it's for I think you find it easier because we got really lucky with the people we have recruited. So I've done HR for a while now, and I've done it in crypto before I joined Alephium. And so one thing that is clear is like um, we've been very lucky with the people we have in the team. I think we have also chosen to stay quite lean So, but because the objective of the project is not to, for the core team to get bigger, but rather for the community to get bigger and to start contributing to the development of both the protocol, but also the ecosystem around it. So I think now we have found like really a good balance of, we have grown the team to the point where we have continuously increased efficiency without introducing too much, baggage to carry and things like this. So yeah, I think people are working quite independently, but still together. I think we have that critical size where, if we grew more, then we'll introduce a lot of inertia because of how much people would need to coordinate together. Now we have a perfect size. Maybe I can mention that the team is distributed. So we are mainly, like, the majority of the core team member are in Switzerland, but even within Switzerland, we're kind of distributed. I'm in Zurich. Cheng is in Lausanne. We have people in Geneva. The project is based of Neuchâtel, from an administrative perspective, which is another region of Switzerland. But we have people in China, Australia, Sweden, Portugal. So that's a great aspect I find of the blockchain space, is really the way it has impacted people working together. Like, this decentralized aspect and distributed aspect, I think is really valuable from a human perspective.
Totally. It's the diversity of ideas and time zones are both a great thing and a difficult thing. But um, so you're we do want to know a little bit about you and how you got to kind of crypto in general and blockchain, and why you may have arrived there. So could you just kind of back up a little bit? I know you mentioned that you have a history in team building or human resources. Could you kind of paint us a picture of how and why you got to Alephium, and then I want to ask when you met Chang and that type of thing. But we could start with the history.
Sure, I will touch a little bit on this. So I started by successfully failing my university study. I studied chemical engineering in Lausanne, and it turns out I hate chemistry. So, good to know.
Yes.
And I studied business for a little while, and also didn't fall in love there. I then started working for one of Switzerland's most successful startup that was working in self driving car, autonomous mobilities. And I joined that company, that startup, when the team was six, and I stayed until the team had reached 50 people. And I was basically the Swiss knife to the two founders. So I started as a communication intern, and I ended up doing communication, marketing, business development, investor relationship, technical documentation also, because why not? A little bit of everything. Um, and this is actually at this job that I met Cheng and some of the core team member of Alephium. Actually, I was the person who got Cheng his first visa to work in Switzerland. Coincidentally, I was not doing HR at all back then, but that was one of the things I did in this company. And at some point in time, I felt I needed to move on, and network is key. Someone from this company was working was really invested in a Swiss crypto exchange called Like, where he joined as head of product. And so when I wanted to change company, I went into this company. That was in December 2017, and I knew absolutely nothing about crypto, zero. And I thought to myself, well, before I had like a notice period, and I thought, before I join this new company, let's maybe help out on Telegram, so that I can get more familiar with the community, with what they do. And that's a great way for me to be onboarded into the project. But it was in December 2017. And so I got the crypto kitty. I got the first, the first boom. I got Bitcoin at 20,000. And so I got kind of a crash course into crypto, because I ended up, what I thought would be a couple of hours here and there was me 20 hours a day under the table answering people about why their transaction was not going through.
Oh
Uh,
gosh.
so that was a great, honestly, it was really, looking back, it was really fun and a great way to get started. And for this exchange, it was kind of a critical point for them as well, because they used to be semi decentralized and um, trading fee free. So they were basically paying the transaction fee, but also because they were semi decentralized, they were also every transaction was being put onto the blockchain. So they had significant fees, and they had to make a decision of moving from, would they staying semi decentralized but introducing fees, or being centralized but keeping the zero fees. And so they chose to keep the zero fee at this point in time. But they started restructuring, and when I officially joined my official first day, basically the company was going through a crazy restructuring, and it was just putting out fires a little bit everywhere. And I started helping wherever I could, and there was a lot of places that needed help. And this is where I got into HR, because then they had a huge team, over 200 people, but actually no HR department. And I had never done HR before, but I volunteered to kind of have an overview of their current team structure, because they had no idea, so that they could restructure if they wanted to. But it's just restructuring when you don't know your team is a bit pointless. And this is where I got into HR, and I got to, you know, put in place the whole HR operation for a company that had over 200 people working there, completely distributed, everyone working remotely. And then I helped in other aspects like investor relationships. And eventually I also became head of product and doing product management to help fast track the release of what should have been a regulatory approved back office that was built for digital asset for a regulated exchange here in Switzerland. And unfortunately, things happened, and the company had to downsize significantly and reduce this. And this is when I started looking for kind of what I would do next. I did a bit of HR and operational consulting with a few startups in the crypto and non-crypto space. And then somebody asked me about Alephium, because they knew I had worked with Cheng and a few of the other core team member in the past. Someone asked me about Alephium, and I was like, oh, if people are starting to ask me about Alephium, they must be doing something right,
Mm.
because the person that was asking me about it is someone I really trust and value the opinion of. So I was like, oh, let me check out what Alephium is doing. And turns out that was like kind of in May 2021, and uh, they needed someone to take care of the not fun part of running a project, of building a blockchain, which is the operational aspect of a project. And this is when I joined.
That's awesome. That's great color there as well. And it what I took out of that were many things. It was entrepreneurial. It was a, a curiosity for learning. It was a skill in operations and organization. It was, like you said, a Swiss Army knife. And so, so all of that kind of points to, um, you call it the maybe the job that other people didn't want to do, but you have a strength for.
Yeah.
And I find that interesting, and kind of want to ask, maybe, what do you think Alethium, the team, Chang saw in you there? And then what did you see in the core team? Maybe you already knew them very well, and so it was easy. But from the early days, what was something that stood out to you about that core team and Chang specifically,
Yeah.
if anything?
Yeah, so I do want to say, so for me, I wanted to remain in the blockchain space from my previous experience, because I really uh, I think being able to be part of a new technology being built, like people compare blockchain to the internet, and being part of the early days of something like this, I think that everyone that is in the space, it doesn't always feel like it, but we are lucky to be part of it. And this was something that I really wanted to stay a part of a part of. So for me, it was important to remain in the blockchain space. what I saw in the project, I think that first I knew the core team, because at that point in time, the three people that were working on Alephium were three people I worked with uh, at my first job, and then one of them is also the person that got me into crypto with this job in the Swiss crypto exchange. So that was a team. Cheng is the person maybe at that point in time I had worked with the least, but I knew why we wanted him in my first company. We knew that he was a genius. Like, this is something uh, that I know, and I was also very comfortable working with the other people. I think what they saw in me was, again, this ability to, I'm not to cover a vast amount of topic at a quality that I am proud of the work I do. So I think I do a great job in a numbers of areas. And I think because there was a desire to not have a heavy team having too many people, because that's not how we want the project to evolve. I think that I fit right into this because I could cover a large areas. I also had experience working in crypto with distributed team. I I am definitely not a developer, but I have enough technical understanding that, I understand what we're doing, right? Um,
You had enough scars as well from previous experience to understand what it takes and the grittiness to remain and see a project through.
yes, and I mean, I've done community management in crypto, which I think that it's a pretty ruthless and thankless environment to do community management in. It can be quite you know you have to
Yeah,
you have to take it with a smile and laugh about it, because sometimes it can be exhausting.
m- most definitely. So, okay, so that brought us up to your history back up to Alethium. And when you joined, it was in a phase where operational and taking of the technology and kind of bringing it to market. Um, at that time, were you a part of the conversation around fundraising or of kind of launching the tokenomics?
Yeah.
And if so, how are those decisions kind of made behind the scenes?
So the tokenomics of the project, so that was decided before me. So I think they were even but what I know behind the decision of the tokenomics is Cheng wanted to ensure a fair distribution of the token. So we have very a minimum amount of the supply that was minted with the Genesis block, with the vast majority of it being mined over the next 80 years.
Mm,
So what he wanted is he really wanted to ensure a fair distribution. And I think something that was key into his rationale for how much funding we were going for at the time, because I joined in the middle of that first uh, private pre-sale, so the first funding of the project per se. And this is something that is important for us. Is like, we don't want to raise what we want to build something useful. We see a lot in the crypto space. Maybe this will change with the recent event, but in the past, you see a lot of projects that raise insane amount of money, um, an ecosystem that are you spending insane amount of money, and it makes it difficult to find the real utility and usage of this ecosystem, because it's basically partially maintained alive by the influx of so much cash, which eventually might take them to a point where they don't need it anymore. And I think there's different strategy, different approach, different objective. But for us, for Chang, he really wants to build something that is useful, and so he does want a little bit of funding to get the project to a critical mass, where then the project has enough adopters and people who find it useful to contribute. But he doesn't want to artificially maintain a project that no one is interested in by injecting money into it. So it's trying to find this balance of how do we secure ourselves enough that we can get to this critical mass point, but also not, having too much money that we keep going when, there's no point.
totally.
This is not worth it. We're not bringing any utility to anyone. We're not something like this. So that was something that was key. I participated more again from an operational perspective into this private pre-sale. So I took care more of making sure all of the contracts were signed, following up with everyone, and making that operational aspect, making sure everyone got keeping track of how much everyone purchased and what was their address, and making sure we sent the right amount to the right person. Right. There was also a few legal discussions, because this is something also I had experience with, because I dealt quite a bit with the Swiss regulator in my previous job. So I'm also in charge of any legal relationship with our legal counsel, external legal counsel. Um, so because we were discussing the possibility, for example, of having a public sale uh, through an exchange or not. And most exchange, they ask you for a non-action letter from the local regulator where you are based. Um, but the time frame at the time for us to do this, um, the time frame for the regulator to give an initial answer was 12 months, which we were planning on launching the network in the next 3 months, so we could not delay things. So we still prepared the argumentation to the regulator to get this letter, but we never ended up asking for it and didn't do a public sale. um, yeah.
So it's there's no one size fits all for how you go about bringing this to life, right?
Exactly.
And I imagine the timing of when these conversations were happening was uh, it was a fairly good time, at least in the liquidity.
It was at the end of the bull market, right?
Okay, okay,
So that was around mid, like August, September, October of 2021.
gotcha. Okay,
And the mainnet was launched in November 2021.
okay. So the it's just fascinating to hear, because I'm sure there's a million different stories of different uh, approaches to this, and some of the constraints and different jurisdictions, and what makes sense for our project and our morals, and just fitting all of those trade-offs together and coming out with this is where we're at. So what was something that you think, like, that process really taught you, or what was something that was fascinating about that whole thing that you don't think most people, even in the crypto space, understand?
Well, I mean, I don't know if it is fascinating, but what I found very interesting is the complex, like just dealing with the legal aspect. It's a lot of people have this expectation that you go to a lawyer, he tells you what to do, and that is it. So they are the expert and they tell you what to do. I feel like in the crypto space, the relationship is much more, it's a group, it's a joint effort, right?
Mm,
You have to educate the lawyers on what you're doing, make them understand so that they can, because there's no, even though in Switzerland there are a few regulations, the vast majority of the activity around crypto hasn't been formally regulated, right? So it's a lot of working with your lawyers to understand what you're doing and how do it fit into this. So lawyers are learning with you, I would say that is one thing which makes it incredibly interesting, to be part of. It's interesting to look at how other people have approached and understanding the different approach. And like you said, there's not one size fit all, very different approach. And what I liked about the process is, like I mentioned, I had not worked with Cheng that closely before. We were working in the same company a few years back, but we never really worked together. And so that was the first time working with him, and getting to understand a founder, because in the end that was a little bit of his baby. um,
right.
and it's so understanding what was important to him, what was important to him, and how can I respect a maximum of what he wants to do within the reality of the world, and the legal framework, and some other administrative or other consideration. I find that this is a super interesting process, of it's a little bit of mental gymnastic, to be honest, of like trying to respect the original vision and making it true in an environment that maybe puts a lot
Has
of constraints on you on how to get there.
totally, totally. And so maybe you could speak a little bit to lithium and what is the goal? What is kind of the vision or the thing that the team shares as important to bring to market? Um, there are many different protocols making trade offs. What do you feel is the thing that you want the at least the world to see, or at least to give a shot at? What is that thing that you feel like Alephium is embodying or trying to?
So I think that, when blockchain first started, it started as a very strong, I kind of want to say political because I cannot think of a better word, but at least philosophical. Maybe philosophical is a bit better. Philosophical stance on the current system and on the importance of decentralization, disintermediation. But the underlying technology is potentially transformative for so many industry, and I feel like as the industry got a taste of how transformative blockchain could be in so many space, they kind of went at the pursuit of scalability because that was kind of the thing that needed to be solved in order to tap into all of those potential application that would change the world. And I feel like in this pursuit, and I think a lot of that was also how Cheng felt a little bit in different words, obviously, but in the pursuit of the scalability, some projects have made trade-off on kind of the foundational values that made people excited about blockchain in the first place: decentralization, self-sovereignty, disintermediation, and the vast majority of the industry, and security as well. And the vast majority of the industry, as in the pursuit of scalability, has made trade-off on those fundamental. And I think, uh, and probably Cheng told it the same. Is like he saw a little bit the direction where the industry was going in. He didn't felt like he was happy with it, and he wanted to propose an alternative. He wanted to show that there is a way to achieve scalability without compromising on those fundamental. Um, and he actually proposed the innovation. There's Alephium has innovation on a lot of different topics, right? We are lucky to not be the first one, so we can build on the learnings of other projects. So, but originally he proposed those innovation to Ethereum. He proposed them to Cardano. I think even you'd have to check with him again, but I think he even proposed it to some of the core developer of Bitcoin. It was never about, for him, it was never about, oh, I want to make a project and be the face of a project. It was really, I think that we are taking a direction which might work for some, but there are some people who still really care about decentralization, self-sovereignty, disintermediation, and we're sacrificing it for scalability. And I think that there's a way that we don't have to sacrifice them so much. But obviously, as we've learned from now it's like massive technological change into protocols is not something that can be undertaken lightly. Uh,
It
so, but basically, it's this: is like Cheng wanted to offer an alternative, and it's fine. Like this is not. We don't believe in like one blockchain that is going to rule them all. Different people, different application, different sector, different industry will have different needs, and so. But we believe that for us, blockchain makes sense if it's decentralized, if it is secure, obviously if it is scalable because it needs to be usable, right? For the application that it is intended for. And because Alephium is a smart contract, it is meant to have smart contract and application built on top, scalability is relevant in our case. Um, in our case. But yeah, but that ties back into what we discussed before. We want to offer an alternative that we think is useful, and we think uh, it will resonate with some people, and it will answer some of the need and challenges that people encounter in the industry. But if we're wrong, or if it is not, if we are wrong, this is something that we are also, this is something that we're also willing to learn through the experience. We don't, again, this is why the fundraising was more on the conservative side if you compare to what has been done in the space in the past. It's like, if what we do is not useful, this is okay.
So, and I think the other part to that is, um, well, so there's something that we share in common as Wolfram Blockchain Labs and as Alephium, which is we're both part of the UTXO Alliance, and the UTXO Alliance is a way for blockchains that use the UTXO model or extended or stateful UTXO model to learn from one another, to share potential technologies, to help move the UTXO kind of foundational space forward. So, how do you kind of think about other protocols and other development teams in the space as allies, as um, people that may benefit from Alephium's technology as well? Is there something? Can you just speak to that a little bit and how you think we can learn from each other? Uh,
Yeah, definitely UTXO based blockchain. We are a little bit the minority currently in the space, and I think it's because blockchain in general is complicated. This is from a technology standpoint, and the UTXO model, while extremely simple in conceptually, when you want to build on it, then it becomes complicated. So it's not as intuitive. Even though the concept of transaction is intuitive in itself, when you want to build on it, it starts becoming not so intuitive. Whereas the account model is much more like a database and what people, even developer, are used to working with from other space and other industry. So from our perspective at Alephium, we definitely see pe- people within the project within the UTXO space as partner, as allies. That because I think that I hope that the next trend in blockchain, is UTXO based DeFi. But for this to happen, we need to work together to educate people and show that the UTXO model is relevant um, for the pursuit of what the industry is after, which is scalability, more decentralized application, security, and all of that. So, and this isn't something, or at least definitely, this isn't something Alephium can do on its own. That is for sure. And I do think that again, we are such in the early days of the space that, and I guess maybe it speaks also to the identity of our project. Like we want to approach every project as an ally, or at least someone that we can learn from, hopefully work together towards the adoption of UTXO, but even broader um, blockchain. And so I think we're incredibly lucky of being part of this association, because everyone within the association is eager to work toward the same goal. Never felt any whiff of competitivity between the members. It's really, we want to achieve the same thing. We have to help each other because we're pursuing a goal that is bigger than our project individually. And I think that this is something we really appreciate, because that resonate with how we want to approach and put Alephium out there.
yeah, I've gotten that same impression as well, and I think from my own personal perspective, 6 months, a year ago, I would have thought that each one was in competition to a point where maybe there wouldn't be learning shared or an attempt to want to help each other. But that's totally not been my experience or the case, and I'm glad that you can corroborate that as well.
Yeah.
Um,
No, we're incredibly grateful for all of the members, and at least on our side, we're definitely going to try and push for more collaboration, because I think that we're, again, there's a lot of space still to be filled. A lot of We all have to evolve so much in the coming years. Then if you don't have to do it alone, I think that's it's always nicer.
Totally. So we're expecting and are in a multi-chain environment. Um, what type of things or what type of developers do you want to attract to Alephium? Where do you think they're going to come from? And like, what do you want to offer them? Is it DeFi? Is that the thing that attracts the developers, that broadens the ecosystem? Um, can you speak to that a little bit?
I think in the early days of the thought process of Alephium for Chang, DeFi was the big thing, right? So a lot of the and a big thing about DeFi is the decentralized aspect. Is how can you build decentralized finance if your infrastructure is not decentralized? You're you know so definitely there is a focus on DeFi, because right now, in terms of decentralized application, this is where it has grown. This is where you have the more traction today. This is what, when people think about decentralized application, they think DeFi. There are many more use cases. I think what would attract I'm not a developer, so I will say what we're trying to put out there. We are really focusing on the user experience, whether it is for the developer or also for the user. Like one feedback that we get a lot and that we are really proud of is that our desktop wallet is really nice, very easy to use, and maybe one of the nicest UI that people have seen. So we do take really into consideration the user experience and the developer experience. This is why a lot of the technological choice Cheng has made in the design of the virtual machine and in the contract is to make sure that it is easy to build something secure. It's really ease of use, whether it is use of the protocol or use of the different application that we offer on top. And obviously, we have a strong focus on decentralization. So I think that we would, if I have to think like in time frame, right? I feel like in the short term, we will mainly resonate with people who care about things like this. Like if you don't care about decentralization and self sovereignty, I'm not 100% sure that nice developer experience is sufficient in the early days until you have reached a bigger size. Because I think that maybe then developer will still gravitate towards the larger ecosystem at this point. Like the less philosophically inclined developer will gravitate towards maybe the biggest ecosystem, because that probably makes sense based on their objective. So maybe at first we will appeal more to the people that strongly care about decentralization, disintermediation, and they will come because of this, and they will stay because of the developer experience that we offer, and because we can deliver on what we promise. And hopefully in the future, once we have an ecosystem that is a little bit bigger and we have grown, then hopefully then we'll also attract the people that are a bit more technology agnostic, uh, philosophy agnostic, because we will have demonstrated that we can uh, we'll have concrete proof, an example of what you can do with Alephium, and then attract a little bit more. I, I
Totally.
I hope that one of the things that attract people, or at least make them stay, is also um, the approach. Like you said, the approach of pushing the project out there. Obviously, always in crypto, a lot of people have this idea of marketing, which I, to this day, I still don't understand what people like, what a lot of the community member in crypto say. We want more marketing. I'm still unsure about what they are calling marketing. Um, so for sure, probably because we haven't raised crazy amounts, we're not going to see uh, a tram uh, in Switzerland with our logo on it. But we are working to get known, and but going more for an organic approach. And I do hope that this resonate with some people. Um, like
Right.
not overselling, still selling ourselves and promoting ourselves, but doing it with the same spirit of the way we build things.
Well, I think that that's genuine, and that's the kind of if you have that approach baked into the team, and you have the thought of, we're not here to shill, we're not here to just promote, we're not here to spend the money that we raised on pure marketing so that your token can increase in value. It's like, if we're here to build an ecosystem, that's what you would want to hear out of somebody like yourself. So it's reassuring to know that has that baked into the core philosophy, and that every decision that's being made is being made from that point of view. And so that's really reassuring from a team like mine. That's, we're not building a protocol, but we're researching and sharing and analyzing and educating ourselves and our community about those who are doing it in the right way.
Yeah.
So thank you.
No, thank you. Yeah, and I think we are doing marketing efforts, right? We have worked a lot on partnership and getting awareness through partnership, and collaborating also with people and projects that are like-minded, that share our values, because we feel like, one, we genuinely want to promote, to contribute to promote people that share some of our value, that can, like this. And also for us, it's also a good way to reach communities where there's already people who share the kind of the foundational value that we have, and it's also easier for us to then appeal to those people. And yeah, it's we are really working hard to do things right, and it's always and we always hope that what we're doing is the right thing. So far, um, I think we've done a great job. I think we've also been lucky. I mean, some people would say launching right into the beginning of the bear market is not lucky, but at the end of the day, it also, you know today, the importance of decentralization, disintermediation, has become very apparent, which I think is good. I mean, it's not good that the way it became apparent, but this is something that, for Alephium at least, it shows that what we are trying to put out there is important. Other people think it is important.
Yeah. What's riding in the background here is the implosion of FTX and a centralized finance, exchange, and it kind of just highlights the reason why we decentralize, the reason why we want to disintermediate kind of the central authorities in, just so that we can get back to some the beliefs of why we're doing this in the first place. And so I just wanted to highlight that's kind of in the timeline of this podcast that's happened over the past few weeks.
Yes.
So you did mention a couple of times about community, and of course, in a large ecosystem, there are different layers, or different types of community members. There's
Yes.
developers, there's the users, there are, well, there will be speculators,
Yes.
but there will be those that are really engaged, want to learn, newcomers, OGs. So, from your experience in developing community, what's kind of the as you begin to build a larger community, what's important to you? What's the important thing to remain true to as a community is developed?
I first want to say, I think we have. I'm really. I think we're all super grateful for the community that we have, because we have a very, like, I think we have assembled a very strong community, and a very engaged one. Because we have a lot of, even though to this days, um, the effort to build on top of Alephium dApps and things like this. Um, After the upcoming network upgrade, will have it will become a lot more easier. But we still have so many people have started building. Even from day one, we had a cloud mining services for people who are not familiar with mining to contribute to mining and the decentralization of the network. So we've been very lucky to have a very engaged team. I think as we grow the community, what I would personally hope for, I think I would want the community to remain civil. Like, I think that respectful of one another, and also respectful of other projects. This is something we try to not allow too much, is we don't want, and this is something we practice, we never, we try to never talk negatively of other projects. Comparing yourself is fine, you can compare because you have to, but you don't have to put a judgment of value in those differences, right? And so I hope that we can keep our community not toxic and respectful towards the different mindset and different approach to blockchain, and try and keep the, yeah, the community welcoming and tolerant towards different, um, and this is something, yeah, I think for me personally, and this is something that I would really actively try to keep in our existing community.
Right. It's the and part of that reason is because when you attract a certain type of person, they become a sales or marketing lead for the rest of the community. So if you can begin by attracting a high quality person, community member, the the effects are compounding on top of that. So
Yeah,
if you can get it right from that start point, it will generally flow easier
yeah,
afterwards.
yeah, and we've done quite a good job, because honestly we don't, no, we have a community lead, but he's not, definitely not spending his full time doing community management. We're all helping here and there, but if I compare to my previous experience doing community management in a community that was um, similar in size, different expectation, because that community was using a service. So there's a little bit like, my previous job was an exchange, so the people were the user of the exchange, so it's slightly different. But I think that we have an incredibly helpful community. We have every kind of the OG of our community, but even the more recent members, they always help the newcomer. So we don't have to do, we have been lucky that we didn't have to do a lot of community management. Like it's quite self-organized, with a few, obviously there's always, you have people that are more prominent than others in certain areas, but it kind of has a life of its own, and yeah.
Totally. That's a community. It has a life of its own, and well, it's I'm sure it's a different beast at different scales.
Yes.
Let me ask something about. Well, let's go a little bit more broad here, because we do this educational segment for our community, and it's to educate people in general just about what is blockchain and what's the point, and what can you do here, what tools can you use. And one of the terms that a lot of people are curious about is Web3, and that's because what does that mean, and usually it requires an understanding of Web 1 or Web 2. And I just kind of wanted to get your perspective on what does like Web 3 mean? Do you even use that term? And can you kind of place it for us in terms of what was previous to what we're experiencing now?
Yeah. So Web one is the first version of the internet, and it was, to really make it super simple. It was more of a read only internet, with basically the information being a few people creating the content, and a lot, and people consuming it, but without interacting with it per se. And it was mainly originally targeting, internet was more used by business, because at that time the cost of having access to internet was doesn't make sense for the large majority of the population. And then we had Web 2, I think it was around 2004 2005, and this is really when we entered the era of the beginning of people, first internet being more accessible to everyone, and having like social media, and people really moving away from the static internet. And this is really, I think, the key things of Web 2 is still, because we are still in Web 2, maybe that's relevant to mention, is really the rise of social media. But and I think another important point, because that then goes into why people are looking towards Web 3, is also the use of data. Like, because now people are using the internet and interacting with the internet in Web 2, there's insane amount of data that is being created and leveraged, and mainly leveraged by um, centralized power. Like, if you go back into the social media front, you have if you are a content creator, you are extremely dependent on this centralized platform that you are using. Uh, they are controlling the data the data that you're creating, the data of the people that are watching your content, and even as an individual user of the internet, that is the case. And I think when people are starting to look at Web 3 as, with again this value that we mention over and over again, which is decentralization, disintermediation, and in this case also data sovereignty. And to go into Web 3, there are a number of technologies that are um, being used to build Web 3 on. So blockchain is one of them, and this is why Web 3 and blockchain are very intertwined in people's mind and in things. But there's also the semantic web, that is one of the technology that is being used to build on what we want Web 3 to be. But it's really, again, Web 3 is this idea of using the internet the way you want, how you want it, and having control over how you use the internet and whatever result of you using internet, I would say.
That's awesome, because the evolution of the internet has played out in our lifetimes from for a lot of us from
Yes.
Web 1 to Web 3. What we're seeing is emerging this ability to do web based activities in a different way, which
Yeah.
is what I think captured us in the blockchain space, our imagination. That when you think about your how your data is being used now, and it's data about me being used to sell to me, and I am out of the loop in that in terms of the kind of the positive incentives in data sovereignty. The ability to have ownership of your data again is where we're entering a time where we're capable of doing that. And now the question is, now that the technology exists, how do we scale it so that it can compete in those same realms as Web 2
Yep.
platforms that are still dominating the space, still have the billions of users? It's just, we
Yeah.
know the genie is out of the box.
Yeah. And the thing is that I mentioned social media because I think that if you're not necessarily in the technical space, this is what speaks to the majority of audience. But this is also true with, like, if you think Google and AWS and basically all of the big web services and things like this from Web 2, they have, I mean, some people say they are more powerful than countries. Um, and I think there's a that Web 2 saw the rise of those. They were built in Web 2, and now there's a want from, you know some, maybe a fairer playing game.
People like yourself and me, we're interested in that, and we do think there's something fair, and so we're going to build it.
I'm going to help. I'm going to support people who build it personally. But
Exactly. I'm going to help educate about the people who, everybody
and
has everybody has it.
their
This
part
really
to
does
play.
require uh, a global community to bring it to the world.
Life,
So
yes.
so along those lines, and as I wrap up here, here in the United States, we're soon to celebrate the Thanksgiving holiday, and it's an interesting time because it's when family, friends, and family get together who are from all walks of life, and it's a funny meme that um, in the crypto space that people who are deep in it are sharing what they do for a living at the Thanksgiving table. What is what do your friends and family still not understand about blockchain? Like, what's the general pattern?
Well,
what are they still asking about?
well, I think the majority of people don't see blockchain. They see crypto first. Like they see crypto as a speculative instrument. So they don't see the underlying technology. They see the gold rush. They see it's very stuck into this, and even people that or into crypto, the that have bought Bitcoin, that have bought Ethereum, and maybe they bought a little bit of Polkadot here and there, like a few things that have been told to buy. Even those people still don't necessarily see the blockchain, and so this is what I try to do. I said yes, like the tokens and the crypto as a speculative investment uh, object. I don't know what word to use for this, but that is a thing. But that's actually just the excitement of this is not what blockchain is about. This is a byproduct from a very exciting technology with a lot of promises and being extremely early in the development of this technology. But that's not. Usually, I try to talk back into the technology, explain what blockchain is, and how this can be used by underneath, to
Yeah,
go away from this layer that is on top of blockchain and the blockchain space, which is the speculative aspect of everyone wants to be a crypto millionaire. Me
yeah,
too.
right, yeah, exactly. So I always find it fascinating, and I do still often have trouble um, giving this simple offering of what exactly are we doing here, because I think people's framework of understanding um, Web 1 and Web 2 is it's just not obvious uh,
Yeah, and I
how
also
that plays
think
out.
And I also think, I mean, you're based in the US, I'm based here in Switzerland. I think we're both part of very privileged environments. So I think we don't experience, maybe as much as other region in the world, the importance of decentralization, like, how painful it is. Uh, I mean, in Switzerland, I can't speak so much for the US, but you trust your centralized administration, and most of the time it is okay to trust them. I feel like maybe they are. So even if you mention the concept of decentralization and data sovereignty and disintermediation, we don't experience maybe as frequently as, or the people in our surrounding don't experience the importance of these things, because we don't experience so much what happens when those go wrong. So it's also why it's difficult sometimes to get them away from the speculative aspect of it, back to looking down into the technology and why this technology is incredibly powerful, and why this is actually what is great about blockchain. um, so yeah.
Yeah, and here we don't question necessarily our money as much as somewhere else might question, do I want to hold this, or what is the thing that do I need to be careful about the value that I have tomorrow? And it's just never, it's like being a fish in water. You just don't see it because
Yeah, and
you're not experiencing it.
yeah, it's like, what is the likelihood of my government confiscating my asset or forcing me to convert my asset into something else? Is like, the likelihood of this happening in Switzerland is much lower than in other countries in the world. So it's not. So while people can understand the appeal of it, they don't necessarily live it every day yet.
True. So, Maud, we covered a lot of ground here, but there's plenty more for us to talk about with Alephium. I would love to have you back in a couple milestones or a couple months to kind of go back through some other things and just
Yeah.
kind of continuously have a open conversation. Um,
Well, this is definitely something I would love to do. So please count me in anytime. And also, if you want to discuss, maybe I mean, I'm always happy to talk about Alephium. But if you ever want to have discussions that are more about different topic, whether it is HR in blockchain or other or legal or listings or whatever, I would be more than happy to participate in any discussions where I can bring uh, interesting perspective.
yeah, 100%. So, thanks again for your time today, and we will talk to you next time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Have a nice day, I guess, for you.
Instead.